It was a trip they had planned for months, a break from the ordinary, a chance to escape the relentless pace of life, the pressures of work, and the familiar monotony of their suburban existence. Emily had always loved the idea of an exotic beach getaway. The thought of sun-soaked days, crystal clear water, and soft sand beneath her feet seemed like the perfect remedy for the exhaustion that had slowly crept into her life. She had been married to Jason for 6 years, and though their relationship was built on a foundation of love, the spark that once ignited their passion had long since dimmed. They had fallen into a comfortable routine, and although there was no fighting, no deep rifts, something was missing. Emily's heart wasn't as in tune with Jason's as it once was. The affection, the chemistry, they were both fading away, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. It was easy to ignore it at first, to push the feelings aside and carry on with her life. But deep down, Emily knew she needed something more. She needed to feel alive again. The beach town they arrived in was everything she had hoped for: picturesque, quiet, and exotic. As they unpacked their bags in the small, cozy hotel room, Jason seemed in his element, happy to be away from the grind. Emily, however, felt the weight of her indecision pulling at her, as though she was standing on the precipice of something she couldn't control. The next morning, they walked along the beach together. The salty sea breeze tousled Emily's hair, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore should have been soothing, but instead, it only made her feel more disconnected from the life she was living. Jason was beside her, laughing, talking about his plans for a boat ride the following day. But all Emily could think about was how little she had in common with him anymore. That afternoon, after a light lunch, Jason decided to take a nap in their hotel room, exhausted from the long flight and the early morning walk. Emily, feeling restless, decided to explore the beach alone. She needed space to think, to clear her mind, to figure out what was really missing from her life. As she walked along the shore, her bare feet sinking into the wet sand, she noticed a man sitting by a beach bar, enjoying a drink and looking out at the ocean. He was alone, his posture relaxed and inviting. There was something about him that caught Emily's attention, something magnetic. He wasn't particularly handsome, but there was a certain rugged charm to him, a mystery that intrigued her. His eyes met hers, and for a split second, Emily felt a jolt of electricity shoot through her body. She looked away, unsure of what had just happened. But something inside her urged her to walk closer. The man smiled at her as she approached, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "Nice day to take a walk," he said, his voice smooth, almost like velvet. Emily hesitated for a moment, but then something inside her snapped. She hadn't come here for a deep philosophical awakening, or to fix what was broken between her and Jason. She had come to find herself again, to reignite something inside her that had been dormant for too long. "Yeah," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's beautiful here." They exchanged a few more pleasantries, and before Emily knew it, she was sitting beside him, chatting as if they had known each other for years. His name was Alex, and he was staying at a nearby resort. He was charming, confident, and completely different from Jason, everything that Emily had been longing for. He listened to her like she mattered, like she wasn't just a wife trapped in a comfortable, yet unfulfilling, marriage. The conversation flowed effortlessly. She found herself laughing, something she hadn't done in months. She didn't want to admit it, but the attraction was undeniable. And as the conversation lingered, as the hours slipped by unnoticed, Emily began to realize that she was drawn to him in ways she couldn't explain. At some point, Alex leaned in, his face inches from hers, and for the briefest moment, she considered pulling away. But instead, she felt herself moving closer. The warmth of his breath against her skin, the way his lips seemed to beckon her, everything about that moment felt dangerously alive. "I'm not trying to make this weird," Alex said softly, his voice low and inviting, "but I feel like we have a connection." Before Emily could respond, his lips brushed against hers, and just like that, everything else faded away. Her mind screamed at her to stop, to pull back, but her body didn't listen. She kissed him back, and in that instant, she felt everything she had been missing. The thrill, the excitement, the heat, everything Jason couldn't give her anymore. The kiss had been fleeting, but it lingered with Emily in a way that nothing else had in years. She pulled back, her heart racing as she stared into Alex's eyes. The world seemed to pause around her, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore becoming distant, almost muffled, as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. I shouldn't have done that, Emily whispered, her voice shaking. Alex looked at her with a mixture of understanding and something else, something more primal. His lips curled into a slow smile, and he reached for her hand, gently pulling her closer. You don't have to explain. Sometimes, people just need to feel something real. She felt the warmth of his hand against hers, a touch that felt foreign and exciting, a stark contrast to the familiarity she had with Jason. The feelings she had suppressed for so long seemed to surface all at once, threatening to overwhelm her. I'm married, Emily blurted out, her words tumbling out before she could stop them. She felt guilty for saying it, but she also felt an odd sense of relief. I love my husband, Jason. I'm not trying to take you from him, Alex said softly. I'm just here, in this moment, with you. The way he said it, so effortlessly, as if there was nothing wrong with what had just transpired, tugged at something deep inside Emily. She didn't know what she was doing anymore. She was caught between the life she had built with Jason and the dangerous allure of something new, something exciting, something that made her feel alive. The hours passed by in a blur. They talked, shared stories, and laughed as though they had known each other forever. Emily couldn't remember the last time she had felt this carefree, this wanted. When Alex suggested they take a walk along the beach at sunset, she didn't hesitate. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Emily found herself walking beside Alex, her hand still clasped in his. She had never been one to act impulsively, but in that moment, all of her usual restraints seemed to vanish. There was only the pull of desire, the spark that had ignited with a simple kiss and had now set her entire body on fire. Tell me more about you, Alex said, his voice soft but full of intent. About what's really going on in your life. Emily hesitated. She didn't want to unload her problems on a stranger, but something in the way Alex looked at her, like he was genuinely interested, compelled her to speak. I've been with Jason for 6 years, she began, her voice almost distant as she gazed out at the ocean. We've built a life together, but it's not the same anymore. The passion has faded, and I feel like I'm just going through the motions. I thought maybe this vacation would fix things, bring us closer, but instead, I feel more distant than ever. Alex listened intently, never interrupting. The weight of her words seemed to hang between them, but his presence was calming, like he understood everything she was saying. And as much as she hated to admit it, the validation she felt from him was intoxicating. I'm not saying I'm unhappy, Emily continued, feeling the need to explain herself. But I feel like there's something missing. I've changed. I've become someone else, and I don't even recognize myself anymore. Alex gave a soft chuckle. I think you're just discovering parts of yourself that were always there. Sometimes, we need a little push to realize what we really want. His words resonated with her, echoing the turmoil she had felt for so long. Maybe she was just lost, trying to find herself in the wrong place, or maybe she was simply seeking validation. Whatever the case, this moment, with Alex, felt like the first time in years she had truly felt seen. The evening passed, and Emily found herself back at the bar with Alex, both of them nursing cold drinks as the stars began to twinkle above them. She felt like she had stepped into a different life, a life where the rules didn't apply. Here, there were no expectations, no judgments, no responsibilities, just the raw, undeniable connection she felt with this stranger. Maybe I need this, Emily muttered, almost to herself, but Alex heard it. What do you mean? I mean, maybe I need to stop pretending that everything's perfect. Maybe I need to stop pretending that I'm happy when I'm not, she said, her voice growing more confident, though a part of her felt vulnerable for saying it out loud. Alex leaned in closer, his gaze intense. It's okay to be honest with yourself, Emily. It's okay to admit that you need something different. Something real. The way he said something real made her shiver. It wasn't just his words, it was his tone, his presence, the promise of something more. She had been married to Jason for 6 years, but in that moment, Alex made her feel like she was truly alive for the first time in a long time. By the time Emily returned to the hotel room, it was nearly midnight. Jason was still asleep, his slow, even breathing filling the room as she crept in, trying not to disturb him. Her mind was spinning, her emotions a tangled mess of guilt, desire, and confusion. She could still feel the warmth of Alex's hand on hers, the spark of electricity from his kiss. It was as if every nerve in her body was alive, buzzing with an energy she hadn't felt in years. But as she looked at Jason's peaceful face, the man she had promised to love forever, the weight of what she had done began to sink in. She sat on the edge of the bed, the sheets cool beneath her skin. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she could feel the cold sweat starting to form on the back of her neck. She had kissed Alex. She had kissed him, and it had felt good. No, it had felt amazing. But what did that mean? Was she ready to throw away everything she had built with Jason for a fleeting moment of excitement? She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath, but the image of Alex's smile kept resurfacing in her mind. The way he had looked at her, the way he had made her feel. He had made her feel desired, seen, something she hadn't realized she was missing. Jason had become so familiar, so comfortable. It wasn't that she didn't love him, but the passion, the fire, had long since faded. What if this is a mistake? She wondered. What if I ruin everything for one reckless choice? But then, another part of her whispered, what if it's not a mistake? What if this is what I've been searching for? She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She loved Jason. She had to. They had shared so much, so many years together, their lives entwined in ways that would be impossible to untangle. But as the thought of Alex's touch and the passion that flared between them came rushing back, she couldn't deny the pull. It was as if she were standing on the edge of two worlds, the life she knew with Jason, safe and predictable, and the intoxicating unknown with Alex. Could she really ignore what she had felt with him? Could she pretend it hadn't happened? Before she could dwell on it any longer, Emily felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She pulled it out, almost instinctively, and saw a text from Alex. Had a great time today. Don't let anyone stop you from feeling alive, winky face. Her heart skipped a beat. Stop you from feeling alive. His words echoed in her mind, ringing louder than any of her rational thoughts. She stared at the message, her finger hovering over the screen as she debated what to do. Should she reply? Should she pretend that everything was fine, that nothing had happened, or should she embrace what was blooming inside her? Before she could make a decision, Jason stirred in the bed, his arm reaching out to find her. Emily quickly put the phone down, her heart racing again as she tried to act normal. She climbed under the covers next to him, feeling the heat of his body against hers. For a moment, everything felt so familiar. But it wasn't enough. Jason turned toward her, wrapping his arm around her waist, pulling her close. You okay? He murmured, his voice thick with sleep. Yeah, Emily replied, her voice shaky despite her best efforts to hide it. Just tired. He kissed her forehead gently before pulling her closer, and Emily felt her stomach twist. She wanted to want him. She wanted to feel the love they had shared for so long. But instead, she felt distant, as if there was an invisible wall between them. She closed her eyes, letting herself drift off to sleep, but the image of Alex's face, the way he had made her feel, kept resurfacing. The next day, Emily woke early, the bright sunlight streaming through the window. Jason was already up, making coffee in the small kitchenette of their room. She could hear the soft hum of the coffee machine, but the sound felt distant, almost hollow. As she sat up, she glanced over at him, his back to her as he worked. Part of her wished she could be happy with the life she had. Part of her wished she could ignore the emotions swirling inside her, the longing for something different. But she couldn't. The night before, as she lay beside Jason, she had realized something. She had been living in a quiet, unspoken lie for so long. A lie she hadn't even known she was telling. Jason turned around, holding out a cup of coffee for her, his eyes soft and affectionate. Here you go, he said with a smile. Emily took the cup, her fingers brushing his for a moment, but the connection felt thin. What if it was too late to go back? She wondered. Thanks, she said, forcing a smile. Jason took a seat beside her on the bed, his eyes bright with excitement. What do you think about renting a boat today? We could go out on the water, just the two of us. I thought it might be nice. Emily nodded, but her mind wasn't on the boat ride. It was on Alex, on the whirlwind of emotions and desires that had taken hold of her. She had kissed him, and now she didn't know how to go back to pretending everything was fine with Jason. For the first time, she wondered if she could really have it all. Or if, like so many others, she would have to make a choice that would change everything. The boat ride had seemed like a good idea at first. The sun was shining brightly, and the ocean sparkled as it stretched out endlessly in front of them. Emily tried to focus on the calming waves, the gentle breeze in her hair, and the sound of Jason's voice as he enthusiastically talked about everything he hoped they would do during the rest of their vacation. But her thoughts kept drifting. She could hear his voice, but it felt muffled, as if it were coming from a distance. Her mind was consumed with the memory of Alex, the way his lips had tasted, the way his hands had held her, the heat of his gaze. The guilt gnawed at her, but the desire was stronger, pulling her deeper into confusion. "I was thinking," Jason said, breaking her out of her reverie. "Maybe after we get back, we can look into buying a place down here. A little beach house for weekends. What do you think?" Emily forced herself to focus on him, to give him the attention he deserved, but her heart wasn't in it. "Not anymore." She smiled faintly, nodding. "Yeah, that sounds nice." Jason's face lit up, but Emily could see a flicker of concern in his eyes. He knew something was off, even if he didn't want to acknowledge it. "You don't sound too excited," he said quietly, glancing at her. Emily swallowed hard, her throat tightening. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to confess what had happened with Alex, to explain how she felt, but the words wouldn't come. How could she explain this to him? How could she tell him that, for the first time in years, she had felt truly alive, but it was with someone else? She turned away, staring out at the water, hoping the silence would shield her from the pressure of the moment. "I'm just thinking, that's all," she said, her voice tight. I think I need some time to process everything." Jason looked at her with concern. "What do you mean, everything?" "We're on vacation, Emily. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves." His words stung, reminding her of how far apart they had grown. They were supposed to be enjoying themselves, weren't they? But all she could think about was Alex, the way he made her feel, how he had opened up a door she hadn't even known was there. She had spent years with Jason, but Alex made her feel like a different person, like someone she hadn't recognized before. Jason's voice broke through her thoughts once more. "Emily, is something wrong? You've been distant the entire time we've been here. If there's something bothering you, we need to talk about it." The question hung in the air, and Emily knew that she couldn't avoid it any longer. The truth, whatever it was, had to come out. But how could she say it? How could she tell him that she had kissed another man? That she had felt more alive in those few minutes than she had in the last few years? She turned to face him, her heart pounding. Jason's eyes were searching hers, desperate for an answer, but all she could do was stare back, frozen in place. The boat slowed to a stop as they neared a small island, and Emily was grateful for the distraction. Jason began to prepare the anchor, but Emily remained still, her mind racing. What was she supposed to do now? Could she continue living this lie? Could she ignore the desire for something more? As the boat docked and they stepped onto the island, Emily's thoughts were still clouded. The soft sand beneath her feet felt comforting, but her heart was heavy. Every step she took felt like a step further away from the person she had once been. Jason seemed to sense her inner turmoil, but he didn't press her. He simply reached for her hand and pulled her closer, his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. She smiled at him weakly, but it didn't reach her eyes. The island was beautiful, with crystal-clear waters and lush greenery surrounding them. It should have been a moment of peace, but all Emily could think about was the fact that she was walking through paradise with a man who was no longer the center of her world. They explored the island, Jason leading the way, talking excitedly about all the things they could do when they returned home. Emily listened absently, her thoughts drifting again. She couldn't ignore it any longer. She couldn't pretend everything was fine when she was torn between her husband and a man she had only just met, but who had already changed her in ways she didn't understand. After what felt like an eternity, they finally returned to the boat, and Jason seemed to sense her detachment more than ever. As they made their way back to the hotel, he tried to engage her in conversation, but it was no use. Emily's mind was elsewhere. When they arrived back at the hotel, Jason excused himself to take a shower, and Emily was left alone in the room. The silence felt suffocating. She sat on the bed, her phone once again in her hand, staring at Alex's last message. Had an amazing time today. Let me know when you're free again, winky face. Emily's fingers hovered over the screen, her heart racing. She knew that replying to Alex would be a decision she couldn't undo. If she responded, if she allowed herself to continue down this path, there would be no going back. She was standing at the edge, staring into the abyss of her own desires, and she didn't know if she was ready to leap. But the pull was strong. The desire, the longing, it was all-consuming. And as she sat there, alone in the hotel room, Emily knew that this moment, this choice, would change everything. The room felt heavier as Emily sat there, her fingers still hovering over her phone, the screen lit up with Alex's message. She could almost feel the weight of the choice bearing down on her. Everything she had built with Jason, all the years of their marriage, the life they had shared, it all felt like it was slipping through her fingers. But Alex made her feel something new, something raw and unfiltered. Her breath caught in her throat as she thought back to their time together on the island. The chemistry between them had been undeniable. Every word, every touch, every glance had ignited something deep within her. With Alex, it wasn't just about lust, it was about feeling alive in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. And now, Jason was in the shower, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside her. Emily could hear the sound of water running, the faint echo of his voice as he sang softly to himself. It was so domestic, so normal. But everything in her felt far from normal. She wanted to run, to escape the crushing weight of the reality she had built, and she knew the only way out was through the decision she now faced. Her phone buzzed again, and she couldn't help but glance down. Another message from Alex. Are you still thinking about me, winky face? The playful tone of the message made her pulse quicken, and for a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just that one message, that one question. Her mind raced as she thought about what would happen if she replied. What would Jason say? What would she even say to him if he found out? And if she didn't respond, if she pushed Alex away, could she go back to the life she had with Jason? Her heart was torn in two, the conflict between desire and guilt overwhelming. She hadn't been the kind of person to cheat, to betray someone she loved. But Alex had unlocked something in her that she couldn't ignore. What if the life she had with Jason wasn't enough anymore? Suddenly, Emily felt the weight of her marriage on her shoulders. She thought about their 6 years together, how they had met in college, how they had built their careers side by side, how they had gotten married in a simple ceremony surrounded by friends and family. They had always been a team. And in many ways, they still were. But something had changed. The passion, the spark that had once ignited their relationship, had dimmed. Over the years, life had become routine, predictable. They had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, but it was a rhythm that no longer excited her. It no longer made her feel alive. Was she supposed to accept that this was her future? Was it wrong to want more? Was it selfish to chase the feeling of being desired, of feeling seen, of feeling like she was someone again, not just someone's wife? The water stopped running, and she heard Jason's footsteps approaching. Her heart jumped in her chest as she quickly locked her phone and tucked it into her purse. She didn't want him to see the turmoil in her eyes. She couldn't let him know what she was really feeling. Not yet. Jason walked out of the bathroom, his hair still wet, and smiled at her as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, you okay?" he asked gently, sitting beside her on the bed. Emily forced a smile, but it felt stiff, like a mask she was wearing. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about stuff." He nodded, still oblivious to her inner chaos. "We're on vacation. You're supposed to be relaxing, not overthinking." She laughed weakly, but it felt hollow. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to explain that she couldn't help the way she was feeling, that Alex had awakened something inside her that she couldn't just push away. But how could she say that to him? How could she hurt him like that? "I know," she said, swallowing hard. I'll try to relax more. Jason reached over and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I'm glad we're here together, he said quietly. We need this time to just be us. Her heart squeezed in her chest. You were enough once, she thought. But now? I don't know. For a moment, she considered telling him about Alex. But as she looked at him, his earnest eyes searching hers, the weight of his love felt suffocating. She didn't want to hurt him. But how could she keep living this lie? How could she pretend everything was fine when she knew in her heart that she was falling for someone else? Jason squeezed her hand. You know I love you, right? He said softly. You're the most important thing in my life. The words hit her like a wave, and suddenly, everything felt so much clearer. The guilt she had been holding onto all this time crashed over her, overwhelming her. She couldn't keep running from the truth, from the choices she had made. But telling Jason would change everything. There was no going back after that. Emily pulled her hand away gently, standing up from the bed. I need some time to think, she said quietly, her voice shaky. Jason frowned, but nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here for you. She walked to the balcony, stepping outside into the warm evening air. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the ocean. She stood there for a long moment, the breeze tugging at her hair as she looked out at the horizon. And for the first time in a long time, Emily made a decision. The night air was cool, and Emily stood on the balcony, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The ocean stretched out in front of her, vast and endless, just like the uncertainty she felt inside. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of purple and gold. She could hear the faint sounds of laughter from other guests at the hotel, the murmur of distant voices, but all of it felt so far away, like she was standing in a different reality. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Alex. I'm missing you. You gonna come back for round 2 soon, winky face? Her stomach tightened. She had been holding onto the phone for too long, trying to resist the urge to reply, but with every second that ticked by, the temptation grew stronger. What if she just replied? What if she told Alex that she wanted to see him again? She could feel the excitement, the rush of anticipation, coursing through her veins. But then she thought of Jason. She thought of his warm smile, his gentle touch, the way he had always supported her. He was the man she had chosen to marry, the one who had stood by her through thick and thin. Could she betray that? Could she betray him? The conflict in her chest was suffocating. She had always prided herself on being loyal, on being the kind of person who would never hurt those she loved. But in this moment, she felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump, unsure of where the fall would lead. Just then, she heard the door behind her creak open. She turned around to see Jason standing there, a concerned look on his face. Emily, are you okay? He asked softly. She hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. The temptation to tell him everything was strong, but the fear of shattering everything they had built together kept her silent. She forced a smile, trying to mask the turmoil inside. I'm fine, she said, her voice unsteady. Just needed some air. Jason walked up to her, his eyes searching hers for any signs of the pain he knew she was hiding. You don't seem fine. You've been distant all day. If something's going on, we need to talk about it. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to be honest with him about everything, the affair with Alex, the guilt she felt, the confusion that had taken over her life. But the words wouldn't come. She was afraid of what would happen if she told him the truth. Would he leave her? Would he hate her? Would everything they had built together come crashing down? I don't know what's wrong, Emily finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I just feel lost. Jason stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. Emily, you don't have to carry this alone. Whatever it is, we can get through it together. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she quickly turned away, not wanting him to see her break down. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Jason, she murmured, barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can be the person you want me to be. Jason's voice softened with concern. What do you mean? Emily, we've been through so much together. We've built a life together. Whatever you're feeling, we can work through it. But Emily couldn't find the strength to say the words. She couldn't tell him that she had fallen for someone else, that she had betrayed him in a moment of weakness. She couldn't shatter the image of the perfect marriage they had built. She didn't know how to explain that her desires had changed, that her heart no longer felt the same. Jason wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a tight embrace. You don't have to pretend to be okay, he whispered. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to face this alone. Emily closed her eyes, allowing herself to melt into his arms for a moment. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that they could work through this, that they could rebuild what had been broken. But deep down, she knew the truth, something had shifted inside her, and she wasn't sure if she could go back. The temptation to reply to Alex's messages was still there, like a constant pull in the back of her mind. But Jason was here, holding her, offering her the love and support she needed. Could she really throw that away for a fleeting thrill, for a connection that had only just begun? The silence between them stretched on, and Emily finally pulled back, wiping away the tears that had escaped her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to break down like that. Jason gave her a gentle smile, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. It's okay. You don't have to apologize. I'm here for you, no matter what. Just, talk to me. Whatever is going on, we'll face it together. She nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had yet to make. The night had fallen, and the world around her felt like it was spinning faster than she could keep up with. As she looked out at the ocean once again, Emily knew she was standing at a crossroads. She could stay with Jason, try to rebuild the life they had shared, or she could take a risk, follow the desire that had awakened inside her, and see where it would lead. But either choice would come with its own set of consequences. There was no turning back now. The ocean was calm, its waves lapping gently against the shore below. Emily stood there, the salty breeze tugging at her hair, her thoughts swirling like the tide. Jason had gone back inside, giving her the space she had needed, but now, the space only felt colder, lonelier. The weight of her emotions pressed down on her chest like a vice. It was time to make a choice. She could feel it deep inside her. Every moment she hesitated, the decision seemed to get harder, but she also knew that every moment of hesitation was one more moment that her marriage was slipping away from her. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. She didn't need to look at it to know who it was. It was Alex. You coming back to me tonight? Her heart skipped a beat. Every time she saw his name, her stomach tightened with a strange mix of desire and guilt. But this was her life, her marriage at stake. She couldn't let one careless decision ruin everything she had worked for, could she? Emily slowly turned back toward the balcony door. She could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning from inside, the faint rustle of fabric as Jason moved around in the bedroom. He had been patient with her, loving even, but that patience was running out. He needed answers, and so did she. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked her phone. Her fingers trembled as she typed a response to Alex, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. She hit send before she could change her mind. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the screen as if the decision she had just made would somehow come to life before her eyes. But nothing changed. The phone was silent. Turning away from the balcony, Emily walked back inside. Jason was sitting on the bed now, his back against the headboard, his eyes full of concern as she entered. The look on his face made her stomach twist with guilt. Emily, talk to me. Please, he said, his voice soft, almost pleading. She stood there, frozen for a moment, the weight of the words she needed to say pressing down on her. She knew she had to tell him. But how? How could she say what she had done? How could she explain the feelings she had for someone else, someone who had no place in their life, in their marriage? Jason waited patiently, his eyes never leaving hers, as if giving her the space to find the right words. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice shaking. I've been thinking a lot, Jason. About us. About everything. She paused, trying to steady her breath. And, there's something I need to tell you. Jason's expression softened, and he reached for her hand. Whatever it is, we'll get through it. You can tell me. Her heart ached as she looked at him, the man she had spent 6 years with, the man who loved her unconditionally. She never wanted to hurt him, but the truth was unavoidable now. I've made a mistake, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been talking to someone else. And it's not just talking. I've been thinking about leaving. About starting something new. Jason's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, the room felt impossibly quiet. Emily felt as though the world was spinning around her, and everything she had known was slipping away. She tried to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. I'm so sorry, she choked out. I never meant for this to happen. I love you, but I don't know what happened to me. I felt so lost, so disconnected. Jason's face was pale, his lips trembling. You've been talking to someone else? All this time? And you didn't tell me? Emily nodded, her heart breaking with each word she spoke. I didn't know how to. I was ashamed. But I can't keep lying to you. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. Jason stood up, his face a mix of disbelief and hurt. He stepped back, as if trying to distance himself from the pain of her words. You've been talking to someone else, and you didn't think I deserved to know? You didn't think our marriage deserved the truth? Emily's eyes filled with tears as she tried to explain. It wasn't about you, Jason. It wasn't about our marriage. It was about me, and how lost I felt inside. I'd been so confused. And then I met someone else. And he made me feel things I haven't felt in a long time. Jason's face tightened, and Emily could see the hurt and betrayal in his eyes. It was too much for him to take in, and she couldn't blame him. She had failed him in every way possible. I don't know what to say, Jason whispered. I don't know what we do from here. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily wanted to say something, anything, to make it better. But she knew deep down that the damage had been done. The trust that had taken years to build had been shattered in an instant. And nothing she could say would change that. She stepped closer to him, her heart aching with regret. I'm so sorry, Jason. I never meant to hurt you. But I can't keep living a lie. Jason's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head. I don't know if I can keep living with this. The finality in his voice hit Emily like a punch to the gut. She had lost him. She had lost everything.